Right now, at this exact moment, thousands of complex software applications are just being built. They're being launched and sold by people who, honestly, cannot read a single line of the code that's running them.
Yeah, it's wild. It really feels like a magic trick.
It totally does. I mean,
Yeah.
you imagine you have an idea, right? And you simply describe it out loud. Just casual, conversational, like the way you'd explain something to a colleague over coffee.
Right.
And then, like, a few minutes later, it exists. You didn't build it. You just imagined it, and something else did the actual building.
Which is just, it's a staggering reality. And that is really the defining tension of our current era. I mean, it sounds like science fiction, but for a rapidly growing number of people, operating this way is just a Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
And it's forcing us to ask some very, very uncomfortable questions about what we actually need to know to, navigate the world.
Absolutely. So welcome into the deep dive. Today, we are pulling our insights from this really fascinating piece. It was published in the weekly commit number 009.
Great.
Yeah, it's an essay titled Vibing. And the mission of our deep dive today is to explore this emerging world of what people are calling vibe coding.
Right, vibe coding.
Exactly. Where humans write in plain English, an AI agent writes the actual code, and the program just runs.
But, this isn't just a tech deep dive.
No, not at all.
We're going to uncover what this radical shift in software actually teaches us about how we navigate complexity in our everyday lives.
Because the concept at the heart of all this is abstraction.
Right.
Abstraction is basically the luxury of ignoring the details. It's why you can, drive a car without knowing how a combustion engine works.
Or why I can use a microwave without a degree in physics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is this incredible gift that gives us speed and leverage and creative freedom. But, and this is the catch, every abstraction also creates distance.
Distance.
Yeah, it puts a layer between us and the reality of how things actually operate. So our focus today isn't some binary debate about whether we should or shouldn't use AI tools.
Right, because the leverage is just undeniable. Exactly. The real question is, what do we choose to do with the silence that these tools create? When the machine does all the talking, how do we stay in the conversation?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the term vibe coding itself is it's so perfectly descriptive of the experience.
It really is.
The mechanics of it are remarkably simple on the user end. You just describe what you want. Like, say you want a login page with a blue button that, saves user emails.
Okay.
You just say that in plain English.
Right.
And an AI agent takes that natural language and writes every single line of code. You don't have to learn syntax.
Which is huge.
Right. Syntax is just the specific grammar of a programming language, and you don't need it. You don't spend 3 hours, debugging a missing semicolon that somehow broke your entire application.
Oh, the missing semicolon, the nightmare of every early programmer.
Yes. You just don't deal with that anymore. You just get this small green light that tells you, yes, it works. It is pure intention, immediately followed by a result.
Which is a massive psychological shift for anyone who has ever built anything. I mean, thinking purely at the level of intention, rather than getting bogged down in the grueling implementation of it, is probably one of the most remarkable things that has ever happened to the craft of creation.
It completely changes the barrier to entry. I mean, think about this in everyday terms for you listening. It's basically the difference between painstakingly writing a 50-step recipe from scratch, measuring the flour, checking the room temperature for the yeast, praying it actually rises.
Right.
Versus just going to a nice restaurant and ordering the meal.
Yeah.
You just say, I'd like the mushroom risotto, and 20 minutes later, a perfect risotto arrives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels like magic.
It does. But the source material notes that when you experience this in coding, somewhere in the back of your mind, something stirs. It isn't panic exactly, but it's this very specific quiet question.
Right, and it's the anchor of this entire discussion.
Yeah.
The question is, do I still need to understand this? Yeah. When the AI writes the script and that green light flashes and the app functions perfectly, do I actually need to know how it pulled that off?
I mean, if the risotto tastes amazing, do I really care how much butter the chef used?
Exactly. But, in the context of building and maintaining systems that literally run our lives and our businesses, that question carries a massive amount of weight.
For sure.
And what's so illuminating about this piece is the realization that this isn't a new fear. The software industry didn't just wake up with this anxiety yesterday.
Right.
The entire history of software, from the very first computers, has actually been a history of letting go.
Okay, let's trace that historical stack.
Yeah.
Because understanding how we got here makes This current moment, I think, makes so much more sense.
Yeah, let's look at that evolution. So in the early days, programmers wrote in machine code,
Yeah.
literal physical switches, ones and zeros.
Painstaking.
Incredibly. Then came assembly language, which was, slightly more human readable, but still incredibly dense.
Right.
Then came a language called C. And when coders moved from assembly to C, they no longer had to manually map out every single physical byte of computer memory. The C language just handled that memory allocation for them.
Oh, wow. That's a huge shift.
It was. And then came higher level languages like Python. With Python, developers didn't have to manually build complex data structures from scratch every time. The language just provided them out of the box.
And at every single run on that ladder, engineers were making the exact same bargain, right?
Yep.
Give up a little bit of granular control to gain a massive amount of speed.
Exactly. And the emotional reaction was the same every time, too. There was this feeling of quiet relief, immediately followed by a faint unease that you had left something fundamental behind. With every new layer of abstraction, someone asked, does this mean we no longer need to understand what's underneath? And historically, the answer was always, well, no, you still have to understand. You just understand at a higher level.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I kind of want to push back on this framing a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Is vibe coding really just the next logical rung on that exact same ladder? Because when you look at the mechanics, it feels like a completely different sport.
How so?
Well, a C programmer back in the day didn't write assembly language, sure, but they still fundamentally had to build the logical architecture of the software.
Sure.
And a modern Python developer might not write C, but they still have to write loops. They have to design logic gates, structure the data flow. In all those historical examples, the abstraction protected the human from the tedium of the system.
Right, it saved keystrokes.
Exactly, it saved keystrokes. But it didn't protect them from the need to actually think logically about the system. With vibe coding, aren't we abstracting away the thinking itself?
I see why you'd think that, and it's a very common reaction right now. But let's look closer, because the historical premise holds up better than we might want to admit.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. Even with Python, a developer is entirely ignorant of how the physical processor registers are flipping those ones and zeros. They are fully insulated from the machine layer, so the gap has always been there.
Okay, fair point. The gap between the human and the silicon has always existed. But, the scale of this new gap feels entirely unprecedented.
What's fascinating here is that you've hit on exactly why this moment feels so disorienting. You're absolutely right about the scale. The stack of abstractions has literally never been taller.
Yeah.
The distance from your initial thought to a piece of working software has never been shorter. Natural language is the new interface.
Just talking to it.
Just talking. And because of that, the question of, do I need to understand this, is honestly difficult to answer for the very first time. Before, you had to understand the logic to make the code run. Now, the code runs whether you understand the algorithmic logic or not.
That is a staggering realization. The machine will just give you the green light, even if you are entirely ignorant of the path it took to get there?
Precisely. And that is where we can pivot away from the computer terminal and actually hold up a mirror to human behavior.
Oh, this is the life parallel.
Exactly. Because this dynamic, using abstractions to protect ourselves from overwhelming complexity, is not just a tech concept. It is a fundamental, deeply ingrained human coping mechanism.
I was thinking about this on my drive today. The parallels to our daily lives are almost uncomfortable once you start noticing them.
They really are.
We build abstractions everywhere. Like, think about your daily commute. If you drive the exact same route to work for a year, eventually becomes muscle memory.
Right.
You pull into your office parking spot, and you realize you don't actually remember driving the last 5 miles.
Yep, highway hypnosis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The commute was abstracted away so your mind could be somewhere else, like prepping for a meeting or listening to a deep dive like this one.
And it happens in our most intimate spheres, too. Think about how this applies to relationships.
Oh, wow.
We let them settle into comfortable routines so our hearts don't have to bear the heavy cognitive load of, actively choosing, negotiating, and analyzing every single micro interaction every single day.
Right, that would be exhausting.
Or think about a career that finds a comfortable groove. Eventually, the momentum of the groove itself does the navigating. You are just writing the abstraction.
It's the ultimate vibing through life.
Yeah.
Just coasting on the momentum of systems we set up long ago.
And we need to be very clear here. This is not laziness.
Yeah.
It's not some moral failure to let parts of your life run on autopilot. It is simply how humans manage the overwhelming, crushing complexity of the world.
Right.
I mean, if you had to hyperanalyze every single physical action required to drive your car or process every conversation in a 10-year marriage as if you were on a first date, your brain would literally
You
burst.
short circuit.
Exactly. These abstractions are a vital form of protection. They can serve our limited cognitive and emotional bandwidth.
But there's a trap there, isn't there? Because the protective layer can quickly become like a sensory deprivation tank.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yes.
yes, there is a profound cost. When we vibe through enough of our life, leaning entirely on those protective abstractions, we stop noticing the underlying data. We stop reading the code of our own lives. We stop asking the important questions, like, why does waking up this morning carry this heavy underlying dread?
Right.
Or why did that casual conversation with a friend leave you feeling so unresolved? Why does this one specific tiny task at work light you up with joy while the rest of the day feels like wading through wet cement?
We miss the data because the script is just executing automatically.
Exactly.
It makes me think of an analogy. Imagine using a GPS app to navigate your own city. You use it every single day for a decade, taking the exact same route.
Okay.
You never look at the street signs. You just listen to the voice telling you to turn left or turn right. It's an amazing abstraction. It saves you all the stress of routing.
Sure.
But then one day, your phone battery dies right in the middle of a detour. You look out the window and you realize you have absolutely no idea where you are.
Wow.
You're utterly lost in the city you've lived in for 10 years because you outsourced your navigation for so long that you never built a mental map.
That is a perfect analogy. The abstraction works flawlessly until it suddenly doesn't.
Right.
And when something breaks in our lives, the routine is disrupted, the career groove disappears, the relationship hits a wall, because we haven't looked underneath the abstraction in so long, we have no idea where to even begin to fix it. We don't know how our own systems work anymore.
So let me ask you, the listener, directly. Where in your life are you vibing right now? Where are you letting the momentum do the navigating? And what breaks when you never look underneath? It's an uncomfortable question, but an absolutely necessary one.
It is uncomfortable, but the beauty of this exploration is that it doesn't just leave us sitting in that discomfort.
That's a relief.
Yeah, it doesn't tell us to throw away the GPS or ban vibe coding or meticulously overthink every second of our day. It offers a practical resolution.
Okay, what is it?
Well, if abstraction creates this dangerous distance, how do we bridge it without giving up the immense leverage that things like AI provide?
All right, because nobody wants to go back to writing assembly language.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to pull over and unfold giant paper map on the steering wheel.
Exactly. We want the speed. So the framework to solve this categorizes our approach into two distinct mindsets. They call it ship versus grow.
Ship versus grow.
Yes. The premise is very pro-leverage. Thinking at the level of pure intention is a gift we shouldn't discard. But there are two ways to interact with any abstraction. You can ship with it, or you can grow with it.
Interesting.
Both are completely valid choices in a given moment, but only one of them compounds your knowledge over time.
Let's break that down. So if I'm not the one physically typing the code, if the AI just generated 1,000 lines in 10 seconds, growing must mean I have to shift my role. Like I have to move from being a writer to being an editor of the AI's work, right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
The engineers who grow are the ones who adopt a very specific practice. They stay curious inside the gift.
Ooh, I like that phrase.
Yeah, when the AI delivers that 1,000 lines of code and the green light goes on, the person who merely ships says, great, it works, moving on. They just take the output and run.
Yeah, check in the box.
But the person who grows pauses? They don't need to be curious about every single line of code because that would defeat the entire purpose of using the abstraction.
Right, you'd be back to square one.
Exactly. But they are intensely curious about this specific thing, the thing that just worked.
Okay, so it's like using a translation app to order a coffee in Italy. Shipping is just hitting the audio button, holding your phone up to the barista, and taking your coffee.
Yeah.
It worked. You got the caffeine. But growing is actually looking at the screen, reading the phonetics, and trying to pronounce buongiorno yourself so you'll learn one new word for tomorrow.
That's the great way to put it.
You use the tool to bridge the gap, but you extract a lesson from it.
I love that. And the mechanism of how you extract that lesson in coding is by asking questions of the machine's output. You ask, why did it do that?
Right.
What specific algorithmic logic did the AI use to solve my problem? What did it understand about my intention that I hadn't even explicitly said out loud?
Wow. So you're analyzing it.
Yes, by isolating just a piece of the output, you are reverse engineering the AI's logic. You see how it interpreted your plain English prompt into a functional system.
Makes sense.
You aren't learning the whole language from scratch, you're learning how to give better instructions next time, and you're building a mental map of how the system operates. This practice is what separates a mere user from an engineer. It takes a tool, something that just automates a task, and turns it into a teacher.
It fundamentally changes your relationship with the work.
Mm-hmm.
You're staying in the conversation with what you're building.
Yes.
I just love that phrasing. Staying in the conversation, it isn't a technical skill, really. It's a mindset. It's deciding that you aren't just going to be a passive consumer of the AI's labor.
That's the key. Curiosity isn't just a cute trait for beginners who don't know any better. Curiosity is the deliberate, ongoing practice of the master. It is how you maintain your agency in a world that is increasingly trying to automate it away.
So what does this all mean for us today? How do we take this philosophy, this, delicate balance of using the abstraction but refusing to lose our understanding and actually apply it?
Well, there's a very concrete, practical takeaway here. It's a concept known as the commit.
Okay. Walk us through the commit.
Picture the scenario one last time. You've just used vibe coding. The terminal is scrolling with text. The app works perfectly. Your casual intention has become a reality.
The green light is on.
The green light is on. The commit, the deliberate action you must take to grow, is simply this. This time, you scroll back up.
You don't just take the win and close the window.
You don't. You scroll back up and you find just one function, just one specific block of code out of the hundreds generated. And you read it.
Just read.
You read it slowly. Not for speed, but for meaning. You probably won't understand all of it. In fact, if it's a complex AI output, you almost certainly won't.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't.
But by trying to map that code back to your original intention, you will understand more than you did 5 minutes ago. That is the cognitive mechanism of growth. That is how you stay in the conversation.
And it leads directly to the central, really hard-hitting takeaway of this entire exploration.
It is the quote that perfectly synthesizes everything we've unpacked today. The essay says, "The abstraction protects you from complexity. It doesn't protect you from ignorance."
Wow. Let me just sit with that for a second.
Yeah. We have to recognize that complexity is something we manage by using tools, by building mental habits, by letting AI write the heavy code. But ignorance is something we choose.
Right.
When we refuse to scroll back up, when we refuse to look under the hood of our routines, when we just play the audio translation and never learn the word,
Yeah.
we are actively choosing ignorance.
Complexity is managed, ignorance is chosen. That is going to stick with me.
It's powerful.
It forces you to look at every single shortcut you take, whether it's at a keyboard or in your relationships or in your career, and ask, am I thoughtfully managing my bandwidth here, or am I just choosing not to know?
And in an era where the shortcuts are only going to get faster and the abstractions are only going to get thicker, that level of self-awareness becomes your single most valuable asset.
Which brings me to a final thought I want you to mull over today, listener, building on everything we've just discovered.
Let's hear it.
If artificial intelligence is rapidly taking over the how of creation, if the machine is handling the syntax, the loops, the daily grinding execution, doesn't the why become the ultimate human skill?
Absolutely.
Think back to the very beginning of our deep dive. You had an idea, you explained it over coffee, and the machine built it flawlessly. If we no longer need to spend years learning technical syntax to communicate our instructions to machines, perhaps the next great literacy, the next necessary evolution for humanity, is learning to communicate perfectly with ourselves.
Wow. Understanding the root of your own intention.
Exactly. Achieving the deep, unfiltered self-awareness required to know what we actually want to build in the first place. Because when the machine can build anything you ask for in 5 minutes, the only thing that matters is ensuring you are asking for the right thing.
That's a great point.
Right. Because if you're just vibing through life without intention, you might just end up building a beautifully coded, perfectly functioning life that you don't actually want.
And that is the ultimate cost of chosen ignorance.
So scroll back up, read the function, look under the hood of your own routines, and stay in the conversation. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep challenging the abstractions, and stay curious until we meet again.